Dear brothers and sisters, the testimony of a person leading a famous American criminal gang left a deep impression on me as I read it. I am Emmanuel, and I warmly invite you to subscribe to the channel and get comfortable, because this story promises to be one of the most beautiful you have ever heard. Before we begin, I would like to know where you are listening from. Write it in the comments. Let's make the world feel a little smaller and more connected. Enjoy listening. Lately, I have often reflected on how I have lived my life and the choices that have brought me to where I am today. At just 20 years old, oppressed by financial difficulties, I found myself trapped in a dark world, that of drugs. In a short time, this reality led me to become a courier for a well-known American gang, the name of which I prefer not to reveal. From that moment on, my life took a twisted and dangerous turn. The deeper I immersed myself in that world, the more respect I earned, climbing the ranks to become one of the most influential members of the group. But that success came at a very high price. Every step forward was marked by wrong decisions and morally reprehensible actions. I found myself committing acts of violence, intimidating innocent people, and staining myself with terrible deeds like burning cars or, in the worst cases, mistreating animals. I am deeply ashamed to remember it, but I also participated in fights against people just because of the color of their skin. In that world, there were precise codes. You had to be angry, racist, cold, and willing to pull the trigger if the rules were broken. Looking back, it all seems crazy, but at the time, it seemed like the only way to survive. The way we treated women was inhumane, and the initiation rites for new members were cruel to the point of the unimaginable. I remember mine. I lost 2 teeth and almost completely lost hearing in my left ear. It was a test of strength and loyalty meant to earn a place in the group. Today, I feel a profound sense of shame for who I was and what I did. But in the context of that life, there were no alternatives. Either you followed the rules, or your life ended. When you join those groups, you know too much, and leaving is almost impossible. In 2020, at the age of 59, my health, worn down by years of excesses with alcohol and drugs, had begun to affect my involvement in the group's activities. Outings with my companions were becoming increasingly rare, and the awareness that the reckless years of my life were catching up with me was inevitable. I found myself forced to accept that aging brings inevitable changes, pushing me to come to terms with past choices and my future. Towards the end of August of that same year, I was hospitalized in Northern California for pancreatitis. I lay alone in an empty hospital room, wondering if this was how my story would end, alone among strangers, with no one on the other end of the phone. Obviously, none of my family members were still worried about me. My past life did not allow me to maintain close ties with relatives or family members, as the risk of involving them in the consequences of my actions was too great. This situation led me to avoid creating another family outside of my gang. I preferred to maintain a connection with those who shared my lifestyle and choices because they better understood the reality I lived in. But that day, in that hospital room, I felt completely alone. After the diagnosis and the severe warning from the emergency room doctor, I was already in pain that exceeded anything I had ever experienced in my life. Burdened by unbearable suffering, I was urgently admitted for medical care. What happened in the last hours of that September night would shatter my reality forever. Deep in my heart, I knew I was dying, and that I was called to pay the debt that all men must pay, but I wasn't even remotely ready. Hour after hour, I lay there enduring a piercing pain I never thought possible. My pancreas was dissolving. They were literally eating me from the inside. And just when I thought I couldn't bear it anymore, I felt an internal change in my body. I closed my eyes and shivered. I was surprised, and when I opened them, I realized I couldn't see. There was a dark spot covering my vision. So I began peeling what seemed hardened, removing the wax from my left eye. It felt like peeling an onion layer. Everything seemed to clear up, but my vision was completely blurred, and I started to hear footsteps hurrying around me. Trying to stay calm, I quickly tore the layers from my right eye, wondering what was happening in the world. But my stomach was filled with butterflies telling me something was terribly wrong. Anticipating the unknown, I was paralyzed with fear as my vision began to clear, and what surrounded me came into focus. I found myself on the edge of a sea of people running back and forth like wild animals, hitting each other with a variety of different weapons. Everyone had white eyes up to the pupils. Eerie eyes I will never forget, soulless. They all had the characteristics of a human being, but something was missing. Entering this dark realm, I had about a minute to orient myself and try to understand what was happening. Stimulating questions quickly sprang to mind, questions I didn't voice aloud but still received answers to. Random people in the crowd shouted responses from afar, as if they could read my mind. The first question, of course, was, "What place is this? Hell? Where do you think you are?" It came from a man in the distance, on some sort of balcony. In total shock and disbelief, I thought to myself, it must be a dream. It can't be real. Echoes of laughter came from afar. Maybe I didn't want the answers, but I couldn't help but wonder what was happening. There's no other thought crossing my mind when I realize the gravity of the situation that's beginning to weigh on my shoulders. "Where do you think they send drunk, angry bastards when they die, idiot?" It came from a man standing on the ground about 10 feet in front of me. His words were condescending, but the tone was resolute. I was frozen, the purest and most unsettling form of shock I had ever experienced. At that moment, I realized that no one was speaking verbally, but they were speaking in my head. I trembled as I tried to move away from the ensuing chaos, as if to say, I don't belong here. But I found there was nowhere to go. There was a barrier of darkness, black as pitch, darker and denser than the surrounding midnight sky in this barren landscape of God. As I approached the darkness, I felt my body reject it, like the poles of two magnets meeting for the first time. It was impossible. I was stuck. You know that feeling you get when you're caught doing something you know is wrong? Imagine that same feeling exponentially multiplied by the fact that I was reaping what I had sown my entire life. Me is a large and reductive misunderstanding compared to the raw emotion climbing up the spine of my soul. I found myself in the harshest circumstances and was naked, empty, scared, and exposed. There are no words that can encapsulate the most terrible feeling I have ever experienced. With a single thought, it's over. Now I feel like I'm about to vomit. Not only will I never see my loved ones again, but the God I have loved all my life does not want me. My lifelong belief of being unworthy is now confirmed, and just when I thought things couldn't get worse, it happened. The interrogation was over. Now it was my turn to play with my new friends. In the blink of an eye, every piercing eye turned towards me menacingly, and the restless crowd began to gather around me. I knew it was happening, and I wasn't ready for this. Not at all. They started the assault with random objects, shoes, t-shirts, and more, whipping me with what seemed like a whip for animals. As I pleaded with them, "Not me, please, not me, I don't deserve this," their sneaky smiles and mocking laughter only increased the terror. To them, it was as if it was just a game, and this was only the beginning. They were just getting warmed up. I was surrounded by as many people as could be focused on at once, ducking and weaving as I ran through the crowd. But the more I ran, the worse things got. It was like a video game. As you move from the first to the second level, the game becomes increasingly difficult, and wherever I was, things worsened with every step. Shoes and t-shirts turned into sticks and bats turned into clubs and pipes. The level of pain obviously increased, but it didn't even come close to the pain one would feel being hit by a bat or a pipe on Earth, I imagine. For this hellish game to continue, it had to be that way. The only thing I could do was gather everything I could find and start fighting. The speed at which everyone could move was unheard of. They ran like athletes, hit like boxers, and wielded weapons like warriors. Things were moving at such a fast pace, and from what I could see, many people loved what they were doing. There was pure pleasure in the violence. What could I do but try to defend myself and react? But there were so many of them, and I was fresh meat, and carnivorous birds were pecking every piece of my carcass. It was relentless. Suddenly, I fell into a place that defied all definition. It was dark, oppressive, and more unsettling than any nightmare I had ever experienced. There was no path ahead of me. I was stuck, as if time itself had stopped. The demons that had been tormenting me up to that point ceased, motionless and silent. Their chaos extinguished, leaving an anguishing void that enveloped me like a shroud. It was then that, looking up, I saw something that took my breath away. A vision that struck me like lightning. Before me stood a figure, impossible to describe without feeling the chill sliding over my skin. It was an angel, but not of light. This one was charred, burned, with wounds opening on its body like hungry mouths. Its eyes, so many eyes, scattered everywhere, stared at me with an unbearable intensity, as if they could dig to the depths of my soul and tear out every secret. It wasn't just its form that was terrifying, but what it emanated, an aura of hatred, contempt, and such dense malice that it seemed to envelop me, crushing me. At that moment, I understood. I wasn't imagining it. It wasn't a dream. I truly believe I saw the devil. It wasn't like I had imagined as a child, with horns and a forked tail. But there was something in it that embodied every fear, every anguish, every sin ever committed by humanity. And as I stood there, paralyzed in front of it, I felt an emotion I had never felt before in my life. It wasn't just fear, but a profound suffering, as if my very existence had been placed under an unbearable weight. I remember it spoke, and every word pierced me like a blade. Its voice was both a whisper and a roar at the same time, a sound that seemed to come from the bowels of the earth. It said, "Those like you, racists, criminals, societal rejects, are my favorites. You have served me your entire life. Every choice you made, every despicable act you committed was for me. And I assure you that those like you will forever stand by my side, here, in this place you already know. Whether it's your time now or in a few days, we will meet again." I don't remember anything else, only the pain, the feeling of suffocating under the weight of its words, and the awareness that, in one way or another, the fate awaiting me was now sealed. I knew it wasn't my time because then it vanished, and I assure you that if I hadn't encountered this angel, I wouldn't be here writing this at this moment. A calm and sweet voice caught my attention. "Hey," is all it said, and it was enough to stop me abruptly. What truly intrigued me when I looked at its face was that it was the only one among the millions of them to have a beautiful blue eye and a pure white eye like the others, as if it could see into both worlds. Behind her was a giant man about 12 meters tall that he called the king. He paid no attention to me. The attack seemed to stop as I listened to this angel say, "I know who you are." Perplexed, I thought, "What? I thought you were the leader of a bad gang. How do you know?" I asked her, keeping in mind that all communication was being transferred mind to mind. Her calm comforted me for that brief moment. He said, "You haven't been here long. You can still go back." A feeling I had already lost and probably had slowly forgotten. Hope returned. "How?" was my only question. He said, "You must feel it. Feel like you have returned to where you were before coming here." Since I was still wearing what seemed to be the outline of my hospital gown and was still suffering in the pancreatic area, I knew exactly where I was coming from. "Go," he said emphatically, as if time was about to run out. These were her last words to me, and my brief moment of comfort returned to chaos as bats and pipes began to rain down on me again. Pushing, shoving, and running as fast as I could, hitting my way through the crowd, yearning for the darkness I saw in the distance. Nothing and no one would stop me, no matter how hard they tried, and believe me, they were giving it their all. I began to feel the repelling force of the darkness pushing me back as I approached the boundary. It became so strong that I fell to my knees, struggling against a force I couldn't see, pushing and crawling further away as I was pulled back by what seemed like invisible hands scratching and clawing every inch of my body. Feeling complete exhaustion beginning to calm me, I took one last dive into the darkness. I closed my eyes and, with every fiber of my being, imagined and tried to feel myself back on the hospital bed. I reopened my eyes in complete darkness. It wasn't working. It wasn't working. Laughter and screams pierced my heart. I went back perhaps only a few inches into a dark force I had never felt before and landed on my back, trying to recreate myself and return to that hospital bed. Maybe only 10 seconds had passed before I had the courage to open them to see if I had made it. I was back in my total shock and undeniable amazement. I found myself looking through the hospital sheet. My heart literally seemed to have skipped a beat, and I sat up breathless and screaming. Nurses and doctors rushed and I jumped out of bed, tearing the IV as I fell into the medical machines. I tried to explain to the doctors what had just happened, but I could tell I was falling into the void. In the following 2 weeks, the nurses appreciated listening to my experience and gave me all the comfort they could. The angel's voice was still in my head as I imagined being back in that horrible place again. Sometimes I wonder if, after all I have done in life, it is right for me to endure that pain for eternity. But that angel knew my name. I wonder why it is already written. I guess only time will give me that answer. Reflecting on those lost souls with their eerie white eyes, I feel nothing but sadness. After this profound experience, I made a decision that radically changed the course of my life. I left the gang with which I had spent most of my years, a choice that had heavy repercussions. To protect myself, I had to change countries, names, and abandon everything I knew. But I don't care. I am willing to pay any price, because now I know the truth. Continuing down that path would have destroyed not only my body, but also my soul. Today, I am trying to rebuild my life on entirely new foundations. I joined a Christian group and dedicate myself to helping people in difficulty, especially those who, like me, are trapped in a world that seems to have no way out. Sharing my experience has become a mission. I want my story to be a warning for those walking the same path I took many years ago. I have discovered that there are those who believe in redemption, and despite my mistakes, I have found people willing to listen, to help me walk this new path. I know that nothing I do now will ever be enough to completely repair the damage I have caused. The scars I have left on others and myself are deep, and if the time comes to face eternity, I will humbly accept what awaits me. But until that day, I will do everything possible to be a better person, hoping that this transformation can bring me closer to that light I glimpsed, a hope I no longer want to abandon. I share all this not to seek compassion, but to help those in difficult situations or unhealthy environments understand that there is a way out. Change is possible, but it requires courage, sacrifice, and a strong desire to do good. If this story has touched you, I invite you to share it with those who might find inspiration in it. My hope is that these words can plant a seed of reflection in someone, just as that experience profoundly changed me. Thank you for staying with me until the end. Let me know in the comments where you are listening to this story from. I would love to know more about you. If you liked it, leave a like and subscribe to the channel if you're new. If you really want to help me spread this message, share this video with your friends and family in the groups you belong to. It could be an opportunity for someone else to learn something valuable from this experience. Thank you again for your support. God bless you.